Well, let's talk this afternoon a bit about insect control. I'm going to cover mosquito control a little bit, and I was delighted to hear what Brian said that they're doing here in Allen. It's delightful to see cities not doing the airplane spraying, and I'll tell you what our recommended program is. It's very similar to what he was telling you, but there's a couple of more parts to it. Well, let's see if we can get back to the start here. First of all, pest control that really does work. We've got that on automatic advance for some reason. There we go. The first step is to understand that we don't want to kill all the insects in the garden. This was actually an ad that ran for a chemical company many years ago, and I should have kept the name on it. I think it was an Artho ad, but I can't remember for sure. It doesn't matter. Whichever company it was, that's 180 degrees from the message that we want to give out and we want to use. Killing all the insects is the last thing we want to do. We want to stimulate the life in the garden, and that means, besides stimulating the life in the soil, the beneficial insects that are in the ground, on the surface, on the plants, flying around. That's a very important part of the pest control system that we recommend. And so if we think in terms of 180 degrees from that, same thing. That's the symbol that the chemical lawn care companies used to put in your yard on a little sign after they had been there and sprayed everything. What a great sign for our side. You know, saying that you really don't want to have this company at your place. They don't do that anymore, by the way. They finally figured out that that was not a good message to put out. But controlling insects, a whole lot of it is trying to protect the beneficial insects from honeybees and beneficial wasps down to microscopic things. I get asked about this insect almost every year, how to spray and kill it. Well, first of all, most people that ask me how to spray and kill it or control it don't realize that it's not a wasp. That's a fly. It's one of the most beneficial flies in the world. It's the hover fly or syrphid fly. And not only is it a great pollinator, the adults are, but the larvae are these little slug-looking things that just are great predators for pest insects. So on your roses, you should never be using anything on your roses except the organic program, and we've got that covered by itself on the website and dirtdoctor.com under the organic rose program. But if you spray anything that kills, you'll be harming hoverflies and bees. That's Brandon Pollard, our beekeeper, and that's the bees on top of our carport in the Lakewood area of Dallas. And they've done a great job at promoting raising bees in urban situations. You get some interesting flavors of the honey, but the main thing that I'm just delighted about is that by working with them, we really have a lot more bees, not just the honeybees, but we have a lot more bumblebees and a lot more of the other pollinators since we've been doing this. The only time we've seen a great drop-off in it, and I've talked to a couple of you about what you saw after the aerial mosquito spraying, we saw a real drop-off in a lot of the beneficials, you know, during that period after the spraying was done. Again, we want to promote the life in the soil, on the roots of plants, on the stems of plants. There's healthy biological activity, microbes, on the roots, on the stems, on the petioles, on the back sides of the leaves, all over the plant, that if you spray something that's even a harsh, killing, organic pesticide, you're going to be fouling up that balance. So the main thing we want to do is to promote a balance. I can't even tell what that slide is. Oh. It's kind of hard to see from this angle. Diseases on the lawn, on your vegetables, on roses. You have to understand something very basic there, and that is that diseases are nothing more than biological activity, microorganisms that are out of balance in population. The things that we consider pathogens, like Rhizoctonia and Fusarium and Pythium and all that, they are beneficial also when you've got everything in balance. And what puts everything in balance is using the basic fertility program that we talked about this morning. There's a lot of bad things that you can do, and I doubt there's too many people at this event sitting at home or here. Well, I imagine some of the critics are watching to see what we're talking about, and that's fine. But of all the things that we want to try to encourage people to get away from, it's the synthetic fertilizers that contain herbicides. And this one is one that even some of the chemical proponents and I totally agree on. All the other organic people that are on the radio, and most of the chemical ones too, agree that using a weed and feed, a synthetic weed and feed fertilizer is a really, really bad thing to do, and we all pretty much will point out specifically that that's the worst one of the bunch, Scott's Bonus S. Guess what is still the largest selling fertilizer in the country today? You can do a lot when you have a $1 billion advertising budget. Another product that is just ubiquitous at this point, but it's we're about to get to a point where we're going to be slowing it down. I think we already are. Roundup has been marketed brilliantly as a very, very low toxicity product, and it goes away. It's inactive when it hits the soil and all those things. You've heard all that. We've got tons of research now, and some new stuff just came out about how damaging Roundup, glyphosate is the technical word, is to the environment. First of all, it's terribly harmful to beneficial organisms in the soil, microbiology. We're finding it in water. It's being found all over the globe. It doesn't break down very well at all. It stays as the full Roundup molecule, and the metabolites, as it breaks down, some of them are dangerous as well. But the farmers are finding that where Roundup is used, and a lot of it is in relationship to the genetically modified foods, that the biological activity is so messed up in the soil and on the plants that the trace minerals are not bioavailable to the plant. That's the thing. If anybody ever asks you, well, what's so bad about Roundup? Tell them that. It fouls up the ability of trace minerals to get into the plant. And that also relates to animals and to people. Some of the people that are experts in this subject are saying that that's going to be the biggest hit to our country's nutrition and health of anything that's going on right now, is this fouling up of trace minerals being able to get into the plant, getting into animals, and getting into people. We use the Garrett juice, homemade or a commercial version, doesn't make any difference at all. The one with the fish in it as our basic tool to spray. But now we are at the point where we're adding some of the pest control materials to it, so that when we spray it and drench it, we're doing a lot of beneficial things to the microbiology and feeding the plants and causing plants to set buds better and flower better and all that kind of thing. But we're also using it as a carrier. As I talked this morning also, we still very highly recommend the products that contain beneficial bacteria and mycorrhizal fungus. This company is represented here, and you can talk to them specifically about their products, and you'll learn some good stuff there. Wayne has been doing work all over the United States in agriculture and has now brought a line of products out for retail sales, and we're delighted about it, and they are very high quality, very, very highly concentrated with bacteria and mycorrhizae. That is a disease that all of you have probably experienced at some point in time called damping off. Damping off is usually a mixture of several different pathogens, and it is particularly bad for little seedlings when they first get started, and it's more common for the average growers that are still using peat moss and sterile, quote-unquote, potting mediums. First of all, there's no such thing as a sterile potting medium. You can't have it sterile, but those close to sterile potting soils that are peat moss, perlite, maybe vermiculite, maybe pine bark, they will encourage that kind of disease pressure. And so what most growers do is they spray these toxic pesticides, Balaton and Funginex and this and that and the other. And what they do is make the problem even worse long term, because those chemical fungicides kill all of the microbes. They're indiscriminate. They kill the good guys as well as the pathogens. So the net result is that you've created this virtual vacuum, and guess what grows back first? The pathogens do. So you end up having to just spray all the time. One of the big, it was the Arboretum in Dallas. We did some research with them on cornmeal for disease years ago on periwinkles, and the periwinkle test went very well with the cornmeal as well, or a little bit better than the chemicals. Just before that time, they were putting a fungicide in their irrigation every time they were watering their azaleas. I mean, that's how often some of the people use the toxic chemicals. But all you have to do is start off with good potting soil in the beginning, a living potting soil that has the same things I talked about this morning that we use for bed preparation: compost, rock powders, and sugars. And then you use the natural techniques for disease control, and you never have that problem. It's about the only way you can control powdery mildew on a crepe myrtle, is to use the organic approach. We have what's called the sick tree treatment. You hear me talk about it all the time. It's a physical program. It's not a product. It's to aerate the root zone of a plant or plants that are in trouble, and then while the holes are open, you apply the same products that we recommend for bed preparation: compost, rock powders, and sugars. And you spray the plant with the Garrett juice or Garrett Juice Plus. And if you add cornmeal juice, soak some cornmeal in water and strain off the solids, or the product that I'll show you in a little bit called Biliary Wash, or some other natural way of controlling the disease, you will actually get the disease under control. And here's the best example of all. This is a disease that has hit roses across the country. It's especially bad in certain areas where real high percentages of the same roses have been planted, and people have created kind of a monoculture. It's happened here in some of the developments, and the particular rose that's been mentioned the most in this case is the knockout rose. Knockout roses have been used so much because they're tough. They're really easy to grow, and they bloom all summer, and they don't have the diseases too much, but it has been way, way, way overused. Well, all of a sudden, one day, up jumps the devil, and this disease shows its ugly head. It is manifest on the plant by the new growth being real red and funny looking, not natural at all, and kind of withered a little bit, and also the thorns being really, really heavy. Really massive thorn production, and also some black spots and some lacerations and things on the stem. This is called rose rosette. Well, when I first was asked about this by somebody who called the show, I looked up on the internet real quickly because I hadn't experienced it yet, to tell you the truth. And every website I came across, from the Texas universities to universities across the country and every other rose site I could find, every one of those said the same thing, that rose rosette has no cure, and that the only thing that you can do is pull the plants out, destroy them, throw them away, and not plant any roses for the rest of your life in that place. And they all said the same thing. I couldn't believe it, and I thought, that's the silliest thing I ever heard of. And as I usually do, I thought, well, I'm going to give it a whirl. And we talked to one of the listeners about doing it. She reported her results that were very positive, and then we've gotten other people to try it, and the same thing has happened. What the program is that cures rose rosette and also oak wilt and other very bad diseases on plants is the sick tree treatment. And the sick tree treatment today is that aeration, and while the holes are open, put in the amendments that we recommend for bed preparation and for potting soil. Same stuff. Okay, couple of exceptions here. When you have something really tough, like rose rosette, what we add, and we came up with this recommendation from a tip that we got from a listener, or actually, I guess it was a tip originally from a listener. Somebody called me and told me to use hydrogen peroxide on, well, no, I take it back. I was doing some research in Costa Rica on aloe vera, and the company I was working for was having bacterial diseases on the aloe vera. They were planting it in areas that were just as flat as a pancake. In fact, they had been lasered flat to grow other crops. They put the aloe vera in. Well, in Costa Rica, you get these monsoon rains, real heavy rainy season, and all the aloe vera was getting too wet and staying too wet, especially in the roots, and developing this bacteria called Erwinia. And I got a call from him one day about what I would recommend for it. And I said, what I use when I cut my finger or get a scratch, or when I lived in the Virgin Islands when I was in college and we got cut up on the coral diving all the time, what we used, the only thing that we used that would actually cure things pretty quickly, take the soreness out and cure them, was hydrogen peroxide right out of the grocery store. And so we said, why don't we add it to, well, somebody called the show and said they had mosaic virus on their squash crop. It was a truck farmer. And I said, look, I don't know if this will work or not, but it works on bacterial diseases. Let's see if it works on virus, the mosaic virus. He sprayed it, 3% right out of the grocery store concentration, calls me back in a few weeks and said, Howard, it not only cured the mosaic virus, I've got the prettiest crop that I've ever had. Then we recommended it for curly top on tomatoes, which is a viral disease. We recommended it for various things, and we kept getting all these good results. Well, when Rose Rosette came up, I thought, well, we'll use the sick tree treatment, but why don't we try, and I was talking to this lady on the air about it. I said, why don't we try hydrogen peroxide in the mix? Okay, how much? Well, let's try 8 ounces per gallon of the spray. That's what a lot of the bottles are that you buy at the grocery store or drugstore. And I said, we could also try orange oil, and she said, well, I'll do that too. And so she put orange oil in the spray, I think at 1 ounce per gallon of the spray. And I said, the only other thing that you might want to add is BioWash. BioWash is a fancy soap that I'll tell you a little bit more about. And she sprayed it and she got good results. There's the BioWash, what it looks like. She got good results right away. The new growth came out as healthy as it can be, and it looks like the thing has been completely cured. We've talked to a lot of other people about it. At this point in time, well, up until just a few days ago, I would have to tell people to bootleg this in, because hydrogen peroxide, even though it has food quality uses and everything, and is used on the human body all the time, sold in the grocery store and drugstore, it's not labeled for use as a pesticide. So that means if a company like Tropical John or David Spriggs or somebody, Moore or Tyson Woods, goes out and uses it and sells it and charges you for it, they're breaking the law. But as of just a couple of days ago, there's a fellow that has brought a product on the market and it is labeled for disease control. And this is a big deal because we're about to have hydrogen peroxide out there so that the companies can use it, without getting in trouble. Now, you homeowners can use it, no problem at all, and I recommend it. A company could use it and say that we're using it to clean the spray equipment. It's legal for that. It's legal for that in a certified organic program. So I told some of the people when I was on the advisory board, organic board down at TDA, I told people that would it be okay if we used it to clean the spray equipment and left a little bit of it in the sprayers when we add the compost tea and all to spray the crops. Everybody raised their eyebrows, but knew that I was probably going to be recommending that to people all over the place, which I do. But anyway, hydrogen peroxide is H2O2. It's one molecule bigger than water. It's a fascinating material because, at that level, some people take it internally. I don't. I have rinsed my mouth with it before when I had a toothache or something like that. But the real clean stuff is even used in some food type things and herbal treatments. At 10% mixture, it's a herbicide. It'll kill plants. It's used to kill water weeds and things like that very effectively in the 10 to 15% concentration. You can buy it as strong as 35%. And if you do it, and then dilute it. Use about a tablespoon of that per gallon of water. Be very careful using it because at 35%, it'll burn you. It'll turn your skin snow white, and it really hurts. Ask me how I know. We did some research in Vernon, Texas, trying to grow plants, grasses on land that had been dead for 75 years because of the salt water and the, getting the secondary recovery out. And we grew grass. It was amazing, and it was one of the products that we used in all of our testing out there. The bottom line was that the organic program that I recommend today, that we've been talking about, worked better than anything that we did. But the hydrogen peroxide was a good addition in that situation too. It's also good. Some people have told me that they have landscaping in real heavy clay, terrible clay soils. If you're planting a tree in real rock hard, heavy, dense clay, dig the hole, big, wide, rough-sided hole, and then spray the wall of the hole with hydrogen peroxide right out of the grocery store. It'll start the flocculation of the soil, in other words, softening it up and everything, and then those roots, when they hit that surface, they'll break on out and get going. It's a wonderful tool for that use. This stuff is a fancy fatty acid soap. If you haven't tried it, I'd recommend it strongly. We use it for cleaning around the house and also all kinds of disease control. Orange oil, several manufacturers, Nature's Guide, Medina makes one. It changes. There's a lot of different orange oil products. We're still trying to get somebody to put one on the market that's a clear color. And why is that? D-limonene is clear. It's not orange. They get that by adding a coloring to it. So we're really trying to get a little bit more natural product on the market, and we will one of these days. But right now, that's fine. I use it, and it's a great tool to use in all kinds of ways. The Vinegar company puts out a D-limonene product that is a registered pest control product, and it is a good one. The pest it controls is weeds. It's strong D-limonene, orange oil, and it's registered and legal to spray weeds. And it works very, very well. I approve it highly, use it myself, and it's a good tool. They also make just D-limonene for all the other uses, mixing in with other products as well. Oak wilt, I've been talking about this for a long time. Bob Webster, some of you know that I'm on with Bob for 30 minutes every Saturday morning. Did this morning driving out here. And he and I both have several anecdotal stories about infected trees with oak wilt being cured with the organic program. The universities say it can't be done, but we've done it in several cases. A lot of times, part of the puzzle is starting to water properly. Sometimes the trees are stressed badly because of not enough water, sometimes too much water. Like Tyson was talking this morning, getting that fixed first step. Rest of it is the sick tree treatment, with a very important part of it being to spray the foliage and the trunks of trees and the ground plane with the Garrett Juice Plus. I think putting the hydrogen peroxide in the mix, if you're dealing with something that's that bad a disease, is a very important piece of the program. And by the way, one of the ingredients in Garrett Juice that's critical that a lot of people miss, there's a lot of folks out there that are in organics that have their own liquid mixture that they recommend, and they tend to, across the board, leave out what I consider maybe the most important ingredient in the mixture, and that's the apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar changes the pH. It allows the materials that you're spraying to enter the plant more efficiently. Apple cider vinegar is a wonderful trace mineral fertilizer. It's a natural enzyme. It has a tonic effect. It's one reason that I don't get colds and never had the flu and never taken a flu shot and never will, is apple cider vinegar across the board. For your dogs and cats, for your livestock, whatever you're doing, for your plants, apple cider vinegar, extremely important. And I've probably been clicking away here while I've been talking. Well, just insects in general. When we have something that's a moth, a Lepidopterus insect, I don't mind BT being sprayed if you spray it just on your plants. Don't spray it all over the place because you'll kill butterflies. That's different than the BT that Brian was talking about. BT that kills moth larvae, caterpillars, is just Bt. The one for mosquitoes is BTI. And it also controls, the BTI also controls buffalo flies. It also controls fungus gnats that I know everybody in the room has had a problem with at one time or another. And it controls a few other insect pests, but doesn't hurt even any beneficial insects at all. If you see those anywhere around your property, and sometimes you see them on the handle of the door or on your hard hat in the garage or whatever, don't hurt them, especially when they're still when they're kind of a greenish cast and smooth. Those are the eggs of the green lacewing. When they're white and popped, it looked like popcorn popped open, they've already hatched and gone away, so you don't have to worry about them. But if you see these delicate little eggs, protect them. They're very, very beneficial. And things like what Logan's playing with there, the praying mantids, even though I don't really recommend buying them and putting them out, you want them around, and if you see them, protect them. Here's a little tip. A lot of people will think that that's an asp and destroy it. You know, it stings real badly. That's not an asp. That's an asp. Or a puss caterpillar, and they hurt. They will sting you. The hairs right down the back not only sting, but the hairs stay in you, and it hurts for a long time. What that is the cocoon, the pupal case of the praying mantid. And it's hard like paper mache. The one that you want to destroy is soft and has a real pretty hairdo. That's the difference. And the regular BT comes in Thuricide, which is the liquid, different brand names besides this, just a shot I had. And Dipel is the dust, is the dry form of the material. I prefer to do the control of caterpillars with this. This is trichogramma wasps. You buy the little 1-inch cards or strips, and you buy a mail order, or some of the stores carry them in stock now. You put them out in the spring, and this is one of the 2 things that I recommend for every gardener in the world to do every spring. Put out trichogramma wasps and put out beneficial nematodes. Well, the reason we do that is that we do a preemptive control, prophylactic control of a lot of pests by doing this. We prevent, with the trichogramma wasp, we prevent the caterpillars from ever developing into wasps and going around and laying more egg or caterpillars and eat the plants and lay more eggs and continue to reproduce. And with the beneficial nematodes, we control things like fire ants, fleas, ticks to a degree, termites, and a host of other pests that have one of their life cycles in the ground. So I recommend everybody put out trichogramma wasps and beneficial nematodes at least one time in the spring. And when do you do it? How do you know when to do it? Well, you do it when the foliage first starts to grow on the plants. Bob and I were talking about this on a show not too long ago. Another time that you can put out trichogramma wasp, or more importantly, the beneficial nematodes, if it's January and you have a flare-up of fleas at your house, put out the beneficial nematodes. Even the manufacturers will tell you not to do it. They'll tell you it's too cold. But trust me, and Bob and his listeners have experienced the same thing. You can put them out if you have a flare-up of some kind of pest, no matter when it is during the year. Know what that is? That's the best fly control that you can use in a lot of cases. That's at a restaurant, Gloria's restaurant. I'll give them a plug because they have done it for years on Greenville Avenue here in Dallas. But other restaurants are starting to do the same. You fill a bag with clear water, nothing else, nice and plump, and hang it up. As long as it stays clean and not dusty, it will repel flies beautifully. How it does it, we don't have a clue. We think it's the reflection and the way their eyes are designed, the multifaceted eyes. It creates some kind of a weird illusion of their reflection and scares them away, but it works very, very well. You're going to hear from Tropical John later today, and one of the things he's going to talk about is some of the things we've been playing around with spraying and spray equipment and so forth. And One of the things I was telling Brian about that we're recommending to cities now is adding BTI to your spray and spray it all over the whole property. And the reason is, a lot of times there's enough moisture in the mulch and on the leaves of plants, especially if you have a place like ours where there's too many trees planted by some goofy landscape architect, and it's just a real dark, shady place. You're going to have insects breeding in places other than just stagnant pools of water. So spraying this BTI along with your Garrett juice, might as well get some foliar feeding at the same time, we think is going to dramatically, we've already seen good evidence of it, reduce the pressure of mosquitoes. When I did it, there was not a liquid or a powder form available. There is a liquid form of BTI available now, and it's available commercially, and hopefully it'll be on the retail market pretty soon. You can order it, mail order if you want to now. But you can I used a grater, as you can see, and just grated one of the dunks, and we put it in Trop's sprayer and sprayed the whole place. He sprayed his place too, and in both cases we saw a real nice drop in mosquito populations. Real quickly, this is a product that you need to try if you haven't. This is a selective herbicide for broadleaf weeds. I used it on an area at home that I had just let get overrun with false strawberry, one of the toughest, most difficult to get rid of weeds there is. I used to design it in. That's how I ended up having it at our property. And it started going into St. Augustine, and I was real cavalier, and I didn't care. I had it, and I had wild violets and various kinds of things. Well, when it got to the point where it was about 3/4 of the backyard, I tried this product. The product is made out of potassium bicarbonate, which we use as a disease control, and cinnamon. Cinnamon is the active ingredient, and you can buy it. It's called Garden Weasel Crabgrass Control, and works on crabgrass too. The guy that invented it was a fellow that maintained lawns. But you wet the area, you dust it out or blow it out with a blower like you see over there. That's the dusting miser. That gives you a real fine amount of it blown out. And then it turns the broadleaf weeds, and it'll kill some real strong weeds. Turns it black and then kills the weed, and the St. Augustine grass will be yellowed just a little bit, and then it greens up, and that area is totally 100% St. Augustine again. This is the vinegar that I don't take myself or put in the spray, but it's the one I put in the sprayers to spray and kill weeds. The vinegar formula that I recommend is 10% vinegar, which is pickling vinegar, an ounce of orange oil, and a tablespoon of liquid soap. Make it yourself. There's some fairly similar commercial products. Like I said, you can use the Avenger instead, but that's the homemade version to use. I don't recommend 20% vinegar because it's a petroleum-based product and it's too harsh. You get a big whiff of it and you're not going to like it at all. Plus 10% is strong enough. That's one of the main things that I'll do with it. I'll spray around little trees to keep the lawnmowers and the weed eaters and things like that away, and the trees like it. Even white vinegar, true white vinegar, which is distilled, from grain alcohol, has some trace minerals in it and has a little bit of fertility value, so it doesn't hurt anything at all. That's one of the many steel products that I recommend. That's my backpack sprayer, and I use the backpack sprayer generally when I'm spraying one of these organic pesticides. Also use it, herbicides. Also use it for just spraying Garrett juice and regular things as well. If you want to put in new beds and you have grass to kill, you can use either one of those things, the vinegar spray or the Avenger. When you do this, make it a little stronger and more concentrated. There are some fatty acid organic herbicides on the market. One is called Scythe. And if you mix the Scythe and the vinegar together, it'll kill nutgrass, Bermuda grass, Johnson grass, everything. It's really effective. The best thing to do, though, especially in the winter, Just dig it all out. Dig it all out 1.5 to 2 inches deep. Throw it in the compost pile. Spraying any kind of a herbicide, organic or toxic chemical, is not going to do you any good when it's dormant anyway. So just dig the material out, throw it in the compost pile. Everybody should plant this plant to encourage biodiversity in your garden. That is a plant you probably heard me talk about a lot on the air. It's the almond verbena. People go out of their way walking in our neighborhood to come by and smell this thing at our office. It's tremendous. It attracts honeybees, bumblebees, beneficial pollinators, various wasps and flies, as well as any plant that I've ever planted. Maybe second place is this one, but this one only blooms briefly in the spring and then real heavily in the fall, but I recommend it in your garden anyway. It's the white Greg's Mist flower. Kind of hard to find. The one in the nurseries will be the blue one, the purple one. And it's okay. Doesn't attract the beneficials, though, as well as this white one. Texas Bug Book, covers a lot of these things for you. Malcolm and I did a long time ago. For more information on all this stuff for you, that's the haint blue paint at our house. Look at how clean that Eve is. That was painted 3 years ago. Judy, was it painted 3 years ago or 2? 3 years ago. There's no wasp nest, and I like wasps. There's no spider webs. There's no mud daubers. There's no insects collecting there at all. And all it is blue paint. You go to dirtdoctor.com, you look up, go to the library and look up haint blue paint. We have 2 paint chips there for you. Match either one of them. There's a light and a dark. We used kind of one in between. It's really still it's a little bit of a debate about what color is actually the best. That's our front porch. We also did this at the office, and the same thing. And we've gotten reports from several listeners about after using the haint blue paint on any kind of eaves or overhangs or wherever, the insects apparently get confused and think it's the sky is all we can figure out. And it just is amazing how clean it keeps those areas. Real quickly, it's going to be time for you to use this stuff pretty soon if you haven't already. Floating row cover is the generic term. It's used to put over tomato cages and things when you've jumped the gun and planted too early in the spring to keep the wind from blowing the plants and hurting them, but it also keeps the insects out. It's also what I put over our water feature when we were spraying airplanes with the toxic chemicals. It's easy, it's lightweight, easy to use. I don't know if it did any good at all, to be honest with you, but we were telling a lot of people to cover up things, so that's what we used on our water feature. There's another shallow water feature. This is one that Tropical John built for me, and it's one that uses the biological products that I've been talking about, the beneficial bacteria. The quality, the cleanliness of the water is pretty incredible. And the big koi and all the plants seem to like it very well. We didn't lose any fish. I did cover, during the spraying of the chemical assault. And by the way, if you haven't heard me saying it, that chemical spraying from airplanes doesn't do any good at all. That's their product. That's the water purifier that just works beautifully. The only thing the spraying from airplanes did is waste our tax money and kill a very small percentage of the adults that were flying around. It had no effect on the eggs, the larvae, or the pupae that are in the water that you've got to control with BTI products, or the Gambusia fish. I'm a little bit maybe bigger fan of them than Brian seemed to be, but they're a good tool. And we want to encourage the cities to do number one, clean up trash. Any kind of plastic left or lids or cans or anything can be breeding place for mosquitoes. So kicking up the cleanup program is step number one. Step number two is treating the drainage ditches, the underground drainage ways, any place where you can't get any spray at all with the BTI sprays, We're going to probably be encouraging the cities to spray this liquid BTI all over the place if they have to spray something. And then if they want to kill, there's an organic product that you can spray to kill adults, and it's called essential oils. The one that's registered for use for mosquitoes specifically used to be called Eco-Safe or Eco-Exempt. It's now called Essentria. And every one of you can tell your pest control operator, I hope you use somebody like Eco-Safe, like I do, that's right out there in the hall, that uses an natural organic program. Any pest control company can get these essential oils and use them for any kind of pest that you have around, plus other non-toxic products. Again, that's the professional book. I wanted to show you a couple of chaps. This is Dr. Michael Amaranthus, the expert on mycorrhizal fungus, one of my co-authors on the professional book, more knowledgeable and done more research. The research that the critics say that we don't have, he's done about 8,000 studies himself on mycorrhizal fungus alone. And my other co-author, John Ferguson, who is in the compost and mulch business down in Houston and makes, if you know anybody lives in Houston, state-of-the-art quality products. And that's it. That's the way to control pests. We can talk about some specifics, but I'm a little bit late, so I need to get Logan to come up because we've got some gifts to give away. Anybody have a real quick question first? Yes, ma'am. Orange oil will kill beneficial insects. Hydrogen peroxide won't hurt the beneficials at all. It used at the 8 ounces per gallon of water. If you've used it as much as 10%, it not only would kill the insects, but it'll kill weeds. It functions as a herbicide at that level. But the 8% in a gallon of spray is not detrimental to your beneficials at all. One more question, and then we'll give away some things. BTI stands for Bacillus thuringiensis, and those two words are the same on the product that you spray for caterpillars. And then the last word is Israelensis, like Israel. What do we have to give away, young lady?
I think this is in one of the last photos, the mosquito dunks, which you put in ponds or water. And that prize of a 6-pack goes to Perry Hartz from Frisco, Texas. Perry? Yay!
All right. She'll give that to you back in the back.
Yeah, I'll meet you in the back.
Back in the back, okay.
And we have the Texas Bug Book from Howard Garrett. And that is going to go to Terry Ware from Victoria, Texas. And I believe we're mailing this one. Or is there a Terry here? Nope, mailing this one. And then from Steele, who you'll hear from in just a few moments, they're going to give you a choice of one of their products. And you can meet with him in the back afterwards. And that prize goes to George Prawl from Georgetown, Texas. Right.
And that's a great prize. Randy, you want to come on up for a minute? That is really a great prize. The way I understand it, they're going to get to choose one of the Steele products, or are you giving away one specific one, Randy? No, they get to choose one of the products, and that goes to George Prawl, or Prail, I believe it's Prawl. This is Randy Smithwick, and they've been kind enough to support our show and been involved with us now for a while, and it was kind of funny because I used Steele products long before I met them. That backpack sprayer that I showed you in the slide, I've used forever. I've got a little smaller sprayer that I use, but my pruning shears, I have 2 pair, are Steele, and I've used them for 20-something years, and they're just the highest quality. And I'll let Randy tell you a little bit more for a second here.
Well, we came up with about, actually we've been working on about 7 years, and they couldn't get the battery they wanted, the way they wanted it. Last year they finally got it the way they like it. We've come out with it. We've got a full range of products. It's a 36-volt system, and it is like nothing else you've ever seen battery powered. It all is commercial grade, has commercial warranties. Run time is going to run roughly about 25 minutes of full throttle, which in reality that's about an hour and 15 minutes of work, because you just don't run a piece of equipment for 25 straight minutes at full throttle. Like I said, we got the chainsaw, the trimmers, the lawnmower just came out the end of last year, hedge clippers, blower, and as you can see,
This is no toy. All of the things are lower in noise level, and they work as well or better than the gasoline.
and there's no ropes to pull. You don't have to, with the ethanol fuel we have today, it's very, very hard on these small gasoline engines. Today's fuel is good for about 30 days. If you leave gasoline in your chainsaw or your line trimmer, it's going to start varnishing up in about 30 days. So now you've got a repair bill to do. This machine is a little more costly in the beginning. One battery runs all the equipment, but you'll never buy fuel. You'll never have a carb job done. There's just basically no expense to it after an initial purchase. You just recharge the battery. It takes about 17 minutes from 0 to 100 to charge the battery. The batteries last about 800 charges, which we figure is between 7 and 8 years for a normal homeowner. Any questions? I know where you can get one. No air filters. It's all electric motors. Diagnostic on the machine takes about 10 seconds. Basically, all there is a battery, a switch, and a motor. Nothing else.
Randy, thank you, sir.
Thank you.